Some WWE superstars act fearless, some pretend they don't flinch. But when Brock Lesnar walks into a room, the bravado dies fast.
Brock Lesnar going for an F5 to Cena.
The laughter stops, the energy shifts.
Oh my God.
Because this isn't just a wrestler, this is a man who can end you before you blink. And behind the scenes, away from cameras and catchphrases, more wrestlers than you think have admitted it. They want no part of Brock Lesnar when he's in a bad mood. From giants to Hall of Famers to rising stars who learned the hard way, these are the names who felt that fear for real. Now let's start with the first one, Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio has faced giants, monsters, and men twice his size for decades without blinking. But even he admits there was one moment in his career where the fear hit him harder than any 6'1" ever could. The first time he stood inside the ring with Brock Lesnar. Rey is used to danger. He built a legacy fighting opponents so big they could use him as a backpack. But Brock was different. Rey said it himself in an interview. He didn't realize he was actually scared until the bell rang and Brock started moving toward him. That's when it hit him. This wasn't just another big man. This was a freak of nature who combined heavyweight power with the speed of a cruiserweight, and Brock didn't play around. The moment the match started, he tossed Rey like he weighed nothing, launching him across the ring with the kind of force that makes your organs shake. Every time Rey tried to build momentum, Brock swatted him out of the air like a fly. It wasn't disrespect. It was Brock operating in pure predator mode. Rey's fear wasn't about losing. It was about survival. Because Brock doesn't just beat opponents, he overwhelms them. And for a split second, even Rey Mysterio, the man who's made a career out of defying physics, felt what every rookie feels when Brock locks eyes with them. It's one thing to study Brock Lesnar on tape. It's another thing entirely to feel the floor shake when he charges you. And Rey wasn't the only veteran who experienced that shift. Because the next man on this list is a giant, and even he felt the beast's shadow, Big Show. You'd think a 7-foot, 500-pound giant wouldn't be scared of anything. Big Show has wrestled monsters, broken rings, and tossed grown men like pillows. But even he admits there was one person who made him feel something he rarely felt in his entire career, fear. And that someone was Brock Lesnar. Show has talked openly about it. He said Brock wasn't just strong, he was unnaturally explosive. The kind of power that doesn't make sense when you see it up close. One moment that stuck with him happened backstage, long before any cameras were rolling. Big Show saw Brock hop a barricade and sprint toward him during a segment rehearsal. Not jog, not run, sprint. Like a linebacker who suddenly wanted a 7-foot trophy. Show said he had only one thought, wow, he's coming after me. And that wasn't the only time Brock's freakish gifts rattled him. In the ring, Show experienced what few men his size ever feel. Being thrown around by someone smaller. Brock didn't just suplex him. He did it with ease. He didn't hesitate. He didn't strain. He launched a half-ton man like it was routine. For Big Show, that wasn't just impressive, it was unsettling. When a man who shouldn't be able to move you suddenly sends you flying, you start looking at him differently. And Big Show's not embarrassed to admit it. Brock Lesnar scared him because Brock Lesnar shouldn't exist. But he's far from the only one. Because the next man who felt that same intimidation has been cheating danger his whole life. And still wasn't ready for Brock. Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy has swan-dived off ladders, crashed through tables, and taken bumps that would end most careers in one night. Fear isn't in his vocabulary. But even the charismatic enigma admits there's one man who made him feel a different kind of tension the moment the match started. Brock Lesnar. Jeff was Brock's first ever opponent on the main roster, and he didn't underestimate him. He just didn't fully understand what was coming. Jeff said later that Brock wasn't intimidating because of his size. Plenty of big guys have thrown him around. Brock was intimidating because he was real. The way he moved, the way he breathed, the way he looked at you like you were a chore he wanted to finish quickly. The bell rang, and Jeff immediately felt the difference. Brock didn't just overpower him, he ragdolled him with the kind of violence Jeff described as insanely gifted. Every suplex felt like it came from someone who belonged in a different species. Every slam shook the ring like it woke up angry. Jeff prides himself on taking punishment. But even he admitted Brock Lesnar was on another level entirely. Hardy later said something most wrestlers would never confess. If he ever faced Brock again, he'd fully expect to get his ass kicked, because Brock is just that intimidating. Coming from a daredevil who survived everything a ring can throw at him, that's saying a lot. And if Jeff Hardy, a man with no fear of broken bones, felt that intensity, imagine what it did to the next guy, who had never felt helpless in his entire career until Brock Lesnar nearly broke him in half. Spike Dudley. Spike Dudley has been tossed by giants, slammed through tables, and used as a human highlight reel more times than anyone can count. But even he says there was only one night in his entire career where he felt genuine fear. and it was the night Brock Lesnar nearly folded him in half. Spike was known for taking insane punishment, but nothing prepared him for Brock's debut run. The plan was simple. Spike would take 5 powerbombs from Lesnar to sell Brock as the new unstoppable force. Sounds painful, sure, but it's Spike Dudley. This was the guy who survived being tossed into the crowd. He thought he could handle it. Then the first powerbomb hit, then the second. By the third, Spike realized something most wrestlers never admit. He was done. His body shut down. His vision blurred. His neck felt like it didn't belong to him anymore. So he did something he had never done before. He tapped out mid-beating, telling Brock he couldn't take anymore. In later interviews, Spike said it was the only time in his life he felt truly helpless in a wrestling ring. He called the experience cringe and admitted he felt like a coward for giving up. But the truth is simple. Brock Lesnar wasn't hitting him like a wrestler. Brock was hitting him like a man proving a point. And if a guy who built his entire career on surviving the impossible had to literally surrender to Brock Lesnar's power, you can imagine how the next name felt. An Olympic gold medalist who saw something from Brock that made him rethink everything he thought he knew about strength. Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle is an Olympic gold medalist, a real one, a man who won his medal with a broken neck. Fear isn't something he's supposed to feel, especially not in a wrestling ring. But even Kurt has admitted there was a moment when Brock Lesnar made him stop, stare, and think one thing he'd never thought about another athlete. This guy might actually kill me. It happened backstage in 2003. Wrestlers were joking around about who would win in a real wrestling match between Angle and Brock. Both men heard the chatter, but neither wanted to be the first to say, "Let's go." Then Kurt walked past the ring one day and saw something that shook him. Brock Lesnar, all 285 pounds of him, was picking up and slamming the Big Show like it was nothing. Not suplexing him, not guiding him down, manhandling a 520-pound human being like he was a crash dummy. Big Show is a giant. Big Show is a mountain. Big Show is not supposed to leave the ground unless God personally signs off on it, yet Brock was tossing him like laundry. Kurt stood there stunned. He'd wrestled monsters before, but never in his life had he seen someone throw around a half-ton athlete with zero struggle. That's when the thought hit him. If Brock could do that to Big Show, what would he do to a 225-pound Olympic wrestler? Eventually, Angle and Brock did have a private shoot-style grapple, and Kurt narrowly won. But even he said he didn't want to do it again. Not after seeing that kind of raw, freakish strength up close. And if Kurt Angle had to second-guess stepping up to Brock Lesnar, you can bet the next man had his own moment of realization. When Brock moved faster and hit harder than anyone thought possible. Mark Henry. Mark Henry is the world's strongest man. A legit powerlifter. A guy who has bent frying pans, pulled trucks, and crushed apples with one hand just to make a point. He's not supposed to feel intimidated by anyone, but even Mark has told the story. The day he tested Brock Lesnar and realized Brock wasn't just strong. Brock was dangerous. It happened back in OVW, long before the bright lights of WWE. Mark liked to test the new guys, feel their strength, see what they were made of. And when Brock showed up, Henry walked in confident. He figured he could muscle him around. After all, he was Mark Henry. Who could stop him? Then they locked up. Before Mark even understood what was happening, Brock exploded forward with a level of speed Henry had never seen in a man that size. Brock shot in low, grabbed Henry's leg, and took him down so violently that Mark's knee hyperextended on the spot. The world's strongest man was suddenly on the ground, stunned, injured, and genuinely shocked at how fast Brock moved. Henry admitted later that Brock's power wasn't the scary part. It was the combination of strength, speed, and aggression. He said Brock closed a 6-foot gap like a missile, and in that moment he realized something most men never have to face. There are monsters in the weight room. And then there's Brock Lesnar. Mark respected Brock after that, but he also never forgot what it felt like to be caught off guard by someone who moves like a heavyweight and hits like a freight train. And if a man with world records felt that jolt of fear, imagine how the next guy felt. Someone who wasn't just intimidated, but ended up busted open for real. Randy Orton. Randy Orton is one of the calmest performers in WWE history. He doesn't panic. He doesn't crack. He doesn't let anything shake him. But all of that changed the night Brock Lesnar elbowed him so hard that the match didn't just end. It stopped cold like a crime scene. SummerSlam 2016. Orton knew the match would be physical. He knew Brock hit hard, but nobody prepared him for what actually happened when Brock climbed on top of him and dropped a legit MMA elbow straight to his skull. This wasn't a wrestling strike. This wasn't worked. This was Brock swinging like he was in the UFC, and Orton's head split open instantly. Blood poured out in a puddle while the referee scrambled. The crowd fell silent, and even the ringside doctors looked confused about what they were seeing. Randy later admitted he didn't even know what hit him. One second he was blocking, the next he was unconscious in a pool of blood, concussed, and unsure if Brock was going to keep going. That's the part that rattled him, that terrifying unpredictability. Brock wasn't following the script. Brock was fighting. Backstage, the atmosphere was tense. Jericho even confronted Brock because nobody knew whether things had gone too far. And Orton, he said the moment left him pissed off, dazed, and very aware that Brock Lesnar is not a man you can fully prepare for, even with 20 years of experience behind him. And if a third-generation superstar with ice in his veins can admit that Brock rattled him, wait until you hear about the next guy. A rising star who still remembers the beating Brock gave him, because it still shows up in his nightmares. Dominic Mysterio. Dominic wasn't even a full-time wrestler yet. He wasn't in a storyline, wasn't cutting promos, wasn't doing anything except sitting in the front row watching his father work. He was a teenager, a spectator, a kid enjoying the show. And then Brock Lesnar walked out. And Dominic's life changed in about 4 horrifying seconds. Brock wasn't out there to fight Dominic. He wasn't even out there to fight Rey. He was in one of those moods where anything that moves becomes a target. He threw Rey across the ring like he weighed nothing. Then he turned his head and saw Dominic frozen behind the barricade. Brock didn't hesitate. He reached over, grabbed the kid by his shirt, and yanked him into the ring like he was pulling someone out of a burning room. What followed wasn't a storyline beatdown. It was one of the most violent assaults ever on a non-wrestler. Brock launched Dominic with a German suplex that folded him in half, then another, then an F5 that bounced him off the mat with sickening force. Dominic said later in interviews that he genuinely didn't know what was happening, only that Brock was tossing him around like a rag doll and there was nothing he could do. He admitted he was terrified, that Brock felt like a monster he had no physical answer for, and that for weeks afterward he'd replay the moment in his head and shudder. That wasn't fear created by a storyline, that was fear created by survival instinct. Dominic wasn't the only one who learned that the hard way. The next guy found out what happens when you accidentally hit Brock a little too hard. Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman is a walking tank, a 385-pound wrecking ball, a man who flips ambulances and breaks rings for fun. He's not supposed to be scared of anyone, but the moment he accidentally kneed Brock Lesnar in the face at the 2018 Royal Rumble, he realized something terrifying. He had just poked a bear that actually bites. The knee wasn't intentional. Braun was moving fast, Brock was moving faster, and their timing collided. But Brock Lesnar doesn't stop to review footage or talk it out. He reacts. Instantly. In a split second, Brock fired back with a legitimate right hand straight to Braun's jaw. Not a worked punch, not a pulled shot. A real, full-force, UFC-trained hook that rocked a 385-pound monster and sent a message louder than any promo. Slow down. Braun admitted later that the punch rattled him. It didn't just hurt, it reminded him who he was in the ring with. He said that wrestling Brock feels like a real fight because Brock only knows one speed, violent. And if you're off by even half a step, he'll correct you in the most painful way possible. And that's the part that intimidated Braun. Not the punch itself, but the realization that Brock never loses control. He just unleashes it. Braun even said the mentality you need around Brock is simple. Treat every second like you're fighting for real, because Brock might decide to do exactly that. Strowman isn't a man who scares easily, but even he walked away from that night with a new understanding of Brock Lesnar's power. And speaking of power, the next guy didn't have to fight Brock in the ring to feel it. He felt it the moment Brock turned his attention toward him. Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes isn't the type to back down from anybody. He's wrestled with torn muscles, broken bones, and a face so bruised it looked like a Halloween mask. But even with all that toughness, Cody did something most top stars never do on live television. He admitted he was afraid of Brock Lesnar. It happened during their feud in 2023. Cody stood in the ring, microphone in hand, and instead of delivering the usual chest-puffing, "I fear no man" speech, he did the opposite. He told the truth. He said if someone asked him whether he feared Brock Lesnar, the answer would be yes. No hesitation, no bravado, just honesty. And you could hear the crowd react. They weren't used to seeing that kind of vulnerability from a main eventer. But Cody explained why. Because Brock isn't a normal opponent. Brock's the kind of man who could walk into any locker room and instantly decide the mood for the entire night. The kind of man whose stare alone can drain the confidence out of a fully trained athlete. Cody had fought legends, fought giants, fought superstars with decades of experience. But Brock was different. Brock was unpredictable. Brock was violent. Brock was real. And Cody respected that in the only way you can, by acknowledging the fear instead of pretending it didn't exist. For Cody, admitting fear wasn't weakness. It was clarity. Because everyone knows the truth. Brock Lesnar is the kind of opponent you prepare for physically, but feel internally. And with that, we've seen it all. Giants, daredevils, champions, rookies, and future Hall of Famers. Different careers, different styles, but the same reaction when Brock Lesnar walks in the room. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button and drop a comment telling us which wrestler surprised you the most.